Welcome everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Shariea Abdul Kelly, and I am the host of our It's Taboo, Let's Talk. This is our April edition. And today we're talking about child sex abuse, because this is the end of Child Sex Abuse Awareness Month. And we have our host, I'm your host, but we have our two wonderful guests, Brother Gareth Bryant and Sister Shariea Shoatz. Welcome everyone to our Taboo Talk. How are we doing today?
Doing pretty well. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It is a very important subject matter that we need to talk about, because this child sex abuse is running rampant in our neighborhoods, in our communities. Doesn't matter what religion you are, no matter what color you are. This social issue is definitely a subject to talk about and find ways that we can prevent it and help those who have been affected by it move through their lives. So, Brother Gareth Bryant, we know you're a chaplain here in New York City, and I know you deal with a lot of this type of behaviors in your community. And then we have Sister Shariea Shoatz. She is an author and founder and CEO of an organization called Buddy Speaks Foundation. And so they're going to talk a little bit about themselves, and then we'll go from there. So you want to go ahead, Sister Shariea?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. And, as you said, my name is Sister Shariea. I am the CEO and founder of the nonprofit organization Buddy Speaks. Our mission is to provide education and awareness to help prevent and end childhood sexual assault. In addition, we support survivors of sexual assault. I'm also an author. I wrote a book called My Voice is My Superpower. And when I wrote the book, I wrote it as a teaching tool for parents so that they can have a little assistance with starting the conversation to teach the children the body safety rules. Not only am I an advocate, a child sex abuse prevention educator, an author, I'm a survivor. So I know firsthand how it feels to walk around with the secret and not tell, or to tell but not know that I have to keep on telling. So with the book that I wrote and the workshops that I created from the book, it is used to help parents to navigate through it, but most importantly, to empower children so that they won't stay quiet. We want to prevent it. And that's what we teach, the body safety rules. And I believe that there's two parts to that: parent education and children empowerment. So I'm going to wait until our interview to go deep into that. But, to introduce myself, I've been an educator in the industry since 1995. I'm telling my age. And, alhamdulillah. And, I've been an author. I launched the book. I self-published in 2019. And, I'm here to help break the silence, shatter glass ceilings, help people to sit through their discomfort so that we can protect these babies, so that we can support survivors, so that we can become educated, so that we're being proactive versus reactive. We want to stop it before it even starts.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And Brother Bryant, you want to share a little bit about yourself with us?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm Gareth Bryant. I'm a chaplain. Many of my focuses pertaining to my chaplaincy work is suicide awareness, suicide prevention, as well as sexual abuse awareness and sexual abuse prevention. what really got me going, specifically pertaining to being very forthright in terms of my self-awareness and awareness and my diligence to educate people about al-ightisab, which is the Arabic term for sexual abuse. The reason how and why I'm so forthright pertaining to the issue of al-ightisab, sexual abuse, is because via my career as a chaplain, my career as a suicide awareness, suicide prevention advocate, I've actually been doing suicide awareness and suicide prevention advocacy even before I started chaplaincy. And one of the things that I noticed a very stark particular trend among people who are suicidal. And this stat, just for myself personally, I can't speak for any other professional in this field, but I can speak for myself personally. 98% of people who I've ever counseled and or prevented from attempting suicide were sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. Literally almost every single person who I've ever spoken with.
I see, brother, we have a little technical difficulty here. Hopefully we'll get Brother Gareth back on in a moment. I know that the weather is making things a little bit difficult for the streaming, but inshallah, we'll get him back on.
Yes.
Yes.
And,
yes.
you know, and he was saying 98% of people who attempted suicide or who he supports were experienced some form of sexual assault at least once in their life. And subhanAllah, you know, that's why prevention is so important, because oftentimes people don't realize how much prevention affect the after effects of sexual assault. It affects everything that goes on in our life, not just, oh, you were raped, you disclosed, and that's it. So, you know, I'll have Brother Gareth, Chaplain Gareth, continue with that statement.
Yes, I'm sorry I got cut off. I don't know what happened. What I was saying is that almost every single person who I've counseled about suicide and or have prevented from attempting suicide or committing suicide, they were sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. So from my professional vantage point, there's a very strong correlation between suicide and sexual abuse. And once I caught wind of that trend, that's what made me very self-invested in digging deeper into how to do my part to contribute to educate people about sexual abuse and to work towards preventing sexual abuse.
Great. And so the conversation today is going to be based on the work experiences that you guys do. I know Sister Shariea, we will be doing something here on Staten Island next week at A Chance in Life, 1100 Castleton Avenue. We're going to do a workshop, in-person workshop for parents and for children on this subject matter. So we're going to teach our communities how to deal with situations and how to prevent them from happening. So, Brother Bryant, I know that you're going to be also coming on board with us too, doing some of the work and helping to educate our communities in how to deal with child sex abuse. So, Sister Shariea, did you want to add anything else before we continue? I think we're having a little technical difficulty.
Yes, I'm so excited to be able to join you next week. And we are going to, like I said, from my professional experience and my personal experience, I believe sexual abuse prevention is two parts. Parents need to be educated so that they can know and understand the red flag behaviors which comes with grooming, because child sex abuse is a process where when people when people think about sexual abuse, you think of, okay, someone's in a white car, they're going to come grab your kid and rape them, or someone's hiding in a dark alley. No, sexual assault, 90% of people who abuse children are people that they know, people that they trust, people that you trust, people that you care about. So prevention starts with knowing and understanding what sexual assault is, knowing and understanding what grooming is, red flag behaviors. So we're going to dive into that and we're going to talk about that in the workshop, knowing what sexual assault is so that we can prevent it. In addition to parents being educated with what sexual assault is, what is the grooming process, what are the the contact forms of sexual assault, the non-contact forms of sexual assault, because a child can be sexually assaulted and never touched a day in their life. Understanding, what to do if your child discloses, knowing what disclosure looks like, knowing what it sounds like, understanding what boundaries are, knowing how to speak up to people that you love and care about to, tell them that your child is in charge of their body and no, we're not going to force our child to hug. And we do that in the Muslim community. Your child comes into the masjid, astaghfirullah, you better shake Akhi's hand, you better hug your auntie, you better speak. And, I've even had people that do that to me. They come up, they're with their child and you better go hug Sister Shariea. And I saw a little girl cringe, and by far am I a sexual abuser, but I am big and she's little. And I said, no, you don't have to hug me. You don't have to do anything. You are in charge. Whatever you want to do, you can do. And if you don't want to, it's okay. And she felt so relieved. That's because I'm educated. That's because I know to give this child permission to have autonomy over her body. Absolutely. And we as adults, we have to do that. We have to become educated so that even if the grandmother or the auntie or the uncle didn't know, that we know. Someone tells the child, go hug her. We can say as an adult, no, you don't have to hug us. Why? Because if the child feels like they don't have any control over their body and they don't have a say-so, then when a sexual abuser goes to touch them, they're afraid to say no. So in the workshop, we're going to educate parents. We're going to be doing role playing, where it's a long workshop, 2 to 3 hour workshop, and we're going to dive deep. We're going to sit and we're going to be uncomfortable so that we can be comfortable. And in the morning, we're going to educate the children. So that's when I say the 2 parts. The children, they're going to know their body safety rules. They're going to know red flag behaviors, early warning signs. And, and I'm going to read my book to them. And we're going to have a great time. And it's not a scary workshop. But I'll tell you something, parents, for everyone that's listening. Every child who has attended my workshop has said they hate when they're forced to hug a family member, especially their grandparents. And these children have amazing relationships with their grandparents. Does this mean, no, you can't hug your child? No, it means when they walk in, you're allowing them to say how they want to display affection. I have children that run up to me and just hug me. I had a little boy and I was in the parking lot of Aldi and I did not know this child. He ran and he said, there's Buddy. He equated me to Buddy because my face is in the back of the book. And he ran up to me and he gave me the biggest hug and he told me I loved him. He loved me. That's okay. He wanted to do that. But not, he's with his grandmother and she says, there's Buddy Speaks. Run and give her a hug. We don't want to do that. So that's some of the things that we're going to be teaching the parents. And I thank you so much for, Sister Sophia, for bringing body safety to your community, because our children are suffering in the Muslim community and the Jewish community and the Christian community and the Catholic community and the Lutheran community and the Baptist community and the Jehovah's Witness. It's not, like you said, it doesn't matter what religion you're a part of, what your socioeconomic status is, what your race is, what your culture is. So we're going to be breaking down these barriers of prevention so that we can give our children a safe space to say, I don't feel comfortable around this person, or this person did this to me, or this person keeps following me, or this person keeps touching me for no reason. And it doesn't have to be a sexual touch, because sexual offenders, they don't start with sexual touches. They start with little small touches to break down the barriers to see if the child is going to tell. So we're going to talk all about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it is definitely a cultural thing too, because I mean, I'm from the Caribbean too, and it's like, you show affection to the elderly, you touch them, but and like you said, it's not that they're necessarily doing anything to you, but if you don't feel comfortable, and that's important for us to empower our youth and our families to let people touch you if you want them to be, you want to be touched, not
Right.
because you're being forced, because like you said, then we won't teach them how to deter people from, or even talk about if someone is violating them, because they think I have to because they make me, and so they don't have any power. So we're like,
Exactly.
in essence, like giving some power to the kids,
Yes,
and the young folks that are dealing with this type of behavior.
absolutely. We have to empower the children. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean that a child will feel comfortable saying no or saying stop if someone goes to touch them. It's not always the case. That's why parents have to become educated, so that if you see the behavior, you can be comfortable with disrupting it. You can become
Exactly.
comfortable with stopping it. I did it, and it was with someone that was very close to me, and they kept making excuses to be with around this particular child. And the child felt comfortable enough to tell me, and I said something to them. And they said, What you talking about? We like family." Yeah, we like family, but she don't like it and I don't like it. And we're going to stop that right now. And guess what? That person didn't say anything else after that. Why? Because this child was always having a conversation with me. It was my child. We talked about body safety. We talked about telling. I let my child feel comfortable enough to come to me, that I can handle what she's saying to me, and that I was going to believe her and I was going to take action. And that's what happened. And that's why it's so important to always have these conversations with our children, so that they know that we got their back. The shower
Thank you
room.
so much for sharing. I know that Gareth is having a little bit of issue coming back on. I have a question for you, Sister Shariea.
Yes.
Um, so
And people from the audience can ask questions too, right?
definitely, definitely.
Yes.
So we talked about barriers and we talked about prevention, right? So
Yes.
what can you just share with us maybe one or two things that you consider barriers to prevention?
Um, I'll share three, maybe four. But barriers to prevention is, here she go talking about this sexual abuse stuff. They're disinterested. They don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about sexual assault. I don't care about hearing it. It's dark, it's gloomy. No, so you're disinterested in it. Uh, you don't believe that there's a need. I keep my children with me. My children only go around family. I know where my children are. I don't need to learn about sex abuse prevention. That's a barrier. You're disinterested. You feel like you don't need it. Um, and you don't like it. You don't want to talk about it. That's a barrier. And you're not educated. That's one of the biggest barriers. So if you're not, you don't know about sex abuse prevention, you don't know what sex abuse is, you don't know how to protect your children, you're not interested in learning, and you don't believe that it can happen to your child. And sex offenders, they look forward to parents that don't know. They look forward to families that don't want to talk about sex abuse, because they're going to show up as your best friend. They're going to show up as the preacher, as the teacher, as the imam, as the father, as the great father, the great mother, the great grandparent, the cousin, whoever the case may be. Because as I said, 90% of people who abuse children are people that we know and trust. Yes, mothers rape daughters, mothers rape sons, father rapes daughters, father rapes sons, grandparents, siblings. It's a lot of sibling on sibling abuse that takes place. So, and with the sibling, that when we talk about the grooming process, it's a deliberate, intentional um way that they get the parents and the children to trust them is an intentional process that helps you to break down your barriers of prevention. So the barriers of prevention, you're not interested in hearing anything about sexual assault. You don't think you need this information. You don't want to use it. And in addition, you don't know the information.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. You mentioned something a little while ago about sibling on sibling abuse. And do you find in your work that that type of abuse happens during puberty with the male on the female and vice versa? Because I think from experience, I think that's one of the things that when you're going through your uh, body changes, growing in from child to adult and understanding different body parts, that a brother may touch his sister in a certain way that it probably is not normal, or having different things that are happening to their own body that they're not aware of, so they're not educated in terms of how to deal with that. Do you find that a common thread?
Brother Gav, you want to? He's, he
Yeah, we'll
just,
get back. We'll get him back again, inshallah.
sibling abuse doesn't always happen with puberty.
No.
No, because it's not, there's one thing with curiosity
Uh-huh.
where, I'm curious, and that's not abuse, where the children, I'm showing you my part, you showing me your part. The abuse itself, when it's sibling on sibling abuse, sometimes it's when a child is, they're close in age, and
Mm.
they're very close in age. Oftentimes they're acting out the abuse that has happened to them,
I see.
and and there's no boundaries, and it's not always an act of, they're promiscuous, that's why
Mm.
they're abusing their sibling. That's not what it is. I want to have sex, so I'm gonna abuse my sibling. It's usually connected to some form of abuse that a child has experienced, and then they're acting it out with their sibling.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, because
You're welcome.
there's so much to this topic that I can't wait for us to dive into next week to share and learn, and grow from, and empower our families, not just the kids, but the families in essence.
Yes,
And this is definitely a nice start to
thank
that
you.
conversation, to that workshop. And I'm just waiting for Brother Gareth to pop back on. I don't know. We're having some technical difficulty. He comes on
Yes.
and we got to get him back on,
We got to
inshallah.
get them back on. And this isn't the first or the last. I mean, this is
Definitely.
the first, but it's not the last. This is not the last. New York is not far, and we will continue to come, and we will continue to have workshops. And I find that, having these talks really, really helps, because people are afraid. So when they come and they see, oh, it's not that bad, or wow, I'm glad I did know. I've had people who've actually said, before you started sharing, I didn't know that I shouldn't force my niece or nephew to hug me. And they said, now I don't do it anymore. And he runs up to them. And they said, even with my children are 16 and 17. And I'll ask, can I hug you? Can I touch your hair? And sometimes my kid will say, no, I don't want to hug. And I'll be like, dang. But I don't make a face, because I don't want them to think that they're responsible for my emotions. I don't want them to think that they're doing something wrong because they said no. But I'd be like, dang, I'm mom. I wish I could get a hug. I'm not going to hurt you. But I have to model what it is that I teach,
Yeah.
because I don't own their bodies just because I'm their mother. They are not responsible for my emotions. They are not responsible for me feeling sad because they don't want to hug me. They are only responsible for being able to say, no, I don't want to hug. And we are responsible for making sure that we ask. That's how you teach consent. We have to teach consent, and we have to model consent. We can't just tell children, say no or say yes. We have to show children through our own actions how
Right.
we can protect them
Yes, and
and how they
respect
can.
them.
and
Respect them.
respect them.
Absolutely.
And they should be respected. They're children. They're young adults. You know, even if you're a teenager, knock on the door before you go in their rooms. You know, don't walk in the bathroom. I don't care if they're 7. I don't care if they're 5. I don't care if they're 3. Ask permission because you're modeling behaviors that will help them to feel strong enough and safe enough to speak for themselves. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Gareth.
Yes, Brother Gareth. Yes, you want to answer that question?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say is that one of the key things that empowers people with al-bara, agency, is when they complain about something to believe them and to always investigate, because it's always better for us to believe someone's complaints and then find out that the complaints were false or exaggerated, as opposed to us to unbelieve or untrust or mistrust or distrust their complaints, and then later along the line found out that their complaints were true. Because
Yes.
it's a known fact that at least 98% of people who complain about inappropriate behavior imposed upon them from other people and or complain about sexual abuse, 98% of people who make these complaints are telling the absolute truth and the absolute honesty. And what ends up happening is that people, unfortunately, we audaciously and we arrogantly buy into the whole mythos, pseudo narrative of the quote unquote, the boy who cried wolf. Anyone who's familiar with the boy who cried wolf scenario is that there was a young person who kept saying, oh, there was a wolf, there was a wolf. And the person said this so many times that when the wolf actually did come, no one believed them. So that boy who cried wolf mentality is societally ingrained and is socially inherited within many of our societies to mistrust or distrust people when they complain about things, or if they complain about things more than once. So we really need to break that cycle of the quote unquote boy who cried wolf mentality.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So I had mentioned, but at this, the Sister Shariea had, answered that question. I know at the beginning, she talked about a little bit about grooming. And does any one of you want to share a little bit about what that may entail? And not too much, just enough for our audience to understand what that is, and so they could be more a little bit more educated on the subject.
Yeah. Groomers, typically, they're the most sinister of all sexual predators, because they're very patient and they're very intelligent in a sinister way. They'll wait up to like maybe 10 years to sexually abuse a person, because what they want to do is that they want to pinpoint, they want to investigate, and they want to analyze a person's movements, what type of relationship that they have external of themselves, whether they have positive relationship with their fathers or mothers, whether they're known to be wayward, whether they're known to be criminal, whether they're known to be troublemakers, whether they're known to be socially isolated, whether they're known to be social outcasts, whether they're known to be popular or unpopular. And Shariea and Sophia, you already mentioned it, whether or not they're prone to tell if someone violates them. They gather all of this information. They're information gatherers, and they use this information and they weaponize it against their targets.
Yeah.
And they do this for a very lengthy period of time.
Yes. Their goal is to gain trust, to gain access. So they're showing up as someone that really cares about you, really cares about the children. And if they're a family member or a parent, always making excuses to be alone with this particular child, and it's someone that you would never believe. And in the grooming process, and I don't want to give it all up, but the ultimate goal is to make the child break down the barriers with the child and the parent, so they can have one-on-one access with the children, and so that the child can feel like they're responsible party, that they believe that they were a part of the abuse too. It's terrible. And then, parents will second guess, children will doubt themselves, and then children won't disclose, because of the lies because of the manipulation. And these particular people study children. And one of the things they say is if the child knows the body safety rule, if they test the waters and the child says, no, we don't keep secrets. No, you can't make me hug, or whatever the case may be, they will run far away and go find another family because they don't want to be found out. And there's a lot of vulnerable families out here. There's a lot of vulnerable children.
That is so true. You know, I happened to come across a documentary. I think it was on YouTube this week, where a young lady talked about her journey, or should I say, her experience with her father, and what between that and the mother and the girlfriend, and how what she wind up doing to her father because she couldn't take it anymore. It was, I mean, I didn't have enough space in my brain to process that whole horrifying experience that young lady had to go through, where the point that she had gotten pregnant for her father, and she had gotten pregnant for her father, and his girlfriend was saying to her, well, you know, what's going on, because when you get pregnant by a family member, you're prone to have a child with different issues. And so the father wasn't even concerned that his daughter was pregnant by him. He was concerned more of if the child had some developmental issues. And my mind was blown. I was like, oh my goodness, like, how could we process that? Why that's just an illness in itself, a mental illness in itself, to even carry all those different things within that circle.
I'd like to jump in on that.
Oh, absolutely. Go right ahead.
When the subject of sexual abuse comes up, I know a lot of people, a lot of times they throw mental illness into the mix. That triggers me because we know Islamically, if someone is legitimately mentally ill, their pen of accountability is lifted. When a person is sexually abusing someone, that's always a deliberate act. It's never something haphazardly. It's always something methodical, motivational, intentional. People who sexually abuse are dark people, and they want people in the same dark spaces that they're in. And I don't want to give someone kind of like a window or an out or an excuse. I'm not saying you are, but people. I don't want people to think that, oh, well, they're mentally ill. Nah, I'm not buying that. Because the methods of sexual abuse, they're too deliberate for it to just be, like a mental issue. Sexual abusers, they are spiritually toxic. They're spiritually negative people. These are spiritual ills. These are spiritual pathologies.
It is an illness nonetheless. Well, it's not necessarily a mental illness, but it is the way, because that's not a normal process, how we behave with people. It's not normal behavior.
No, I agree 100% that is abnormal. I agree 100%. I'm just saying from my professional vantage point, and just also from an Islamic paradigm, I don't appreciate when, and I'm not saying you personally, but there's a lot of people, they'll just throw mental illness. That's like people just wanting to give them a pass.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Before we go any further, do we have questions from the audience? Because I would love to address those also.
It says, what is the correlation between LGBTQ and sexual abuse and suicide? That's for brother.
Excellent question. That's an excellent question. From my, again, this is exclusively my professional anecdotal vantage point. 98% of people who I've counseled pertaining to suicide, sexual identity crisis, and homosexuality, they were sexually abused at least once during their lifetimes. There's countless people who I've counseled pertaining to suicide, Muslim and non-Muslim. And one of the key things that unites them is their sexual abuse experiences that were imposed upon them. There's a very strong correlation between suicide, sexual abuse, suicide, sexual identity crisis, suicide, homosexuality. Now, that's not to say that suicide, that's not to say that sexual identity crisis or sexual abuse or homosexuality are the causations of suicide specifically, but the correlations, the parallels, the intersectionality between those things are undeniable.
Thank you so much. Sister Shariea, do you have any input for that question?
Brother Gareth, he answered it. He answered it quite well. And, I can't add to it, but to repeat the same thing that he said. A lot of it is connected. You will find that people from the LGBTQ community, they say they chose this lifestyle. And, a person, I must add this, because a person is homosexual, doesn't mean that, let me get my statement together. The majority of people who rape, same-sex rape, are not homosexual. A male who rapes a boy they have been known to be heterosexual individuals. A woman who rapes a girl has been known to be heterosexual. Married, in relationships. So I don't want you to think, oh, he's gay, he's going to rape my son. Oh, she's gay, she's going to rape my daughter. A lot of people, as you said, who are from the LGBTQ community, they have said, I have chosen this. I'm a teacher, so my students, they share with me. I have friends that are part of the LGBTQ community. They say, I've chosen this myself. But many of them are survivors of sexual assault.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the community? Okay, here it goes.
I would like to add to what Shariea mentioned very, very quickly, as I can. It is true that there is a dark stigma that people assume that just because someone's homosexual, that they're a sexual predator. That's true. That is a very unjust, unfair stigma. But what's also untrue and dishonest that a lot of people presume is that it doesn't matter what type of heterosexual relationship that you're in. If you are sexually abusing a member of the same gender, that's homosexuality by default. Now, a lot of people, they do that exclusively to impose a power dynamic, because we have to remember, sexual abuse has nothing to do with sexuality and has everything to do.
Well, I know homosexuals, people who choose same-sex relationships, they will say, like, they're not going to rape someone, because like sexual assault is not a form. It's pedophilia. That's something different, and I'm not an expert on pedophilia. But sexual assault is an act of rage, an act of control, and when people are homosexual, this is their choice. This is who they want to be with, and I don't know, Brother Gareth. When a male rapes a boy and a woman rapes a girl, it's not an act of love. It's not an act of intimacy. Like people that are in the LGBTQ community, they choose this, and this is who they want to be with. These other people, they're raping and hurting the children. So I don't know.
I agree with you 100%. Just like, for example, in jail and prison culture, right? When you'll have people, they project to be heterosexual, but they rape members of the same gender, right? Yeah. Like you mentioned, sexual abuse has zero to do with sexuality. It has everything to do with dehumanization. It has everything to do with disrespecting someone to the utmost. Because as we all know, sexual abuse is the most disrespectful thing that you can impose upon another human being. No human being deserves to be sexually abused.
I know there was another question. Could you put that up? It says, what are some of the signs to look for in children that may have been sexually abused?
Behavioral changes. I'll talk about the behavioral. Well, we know the physical signs: bleeding, tearing, STDs, discharge, excessive amount of discharge, and might have some genital warts. That's physical signs. Behavioral signs or emotional signs. Children who self-harm, people who start using drugs, your grades suddenly drop. And I'm going to give all of them because you got to come to the workshop for this, right? Your grades suddenly, the loss of interest in things that they used to love, fear of places, fear of people, or becoming extremely attached to a particular person, being an excessive people pleaser, where they're, that's a big sign because they want to be perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to mention about what you mentioned about people being triggered by people, places, and things. There was someone who I was interested in marrying some years ago, and they literally kept telling me that I should cut or trim my beard. And I kept asking them, why would you keep asking me to do this? And they end up disclosing to me that the reason why they have an aversion to lengthy beards is because they were sexually abused by a fellow Muslim with a long beard. So every time they saw my beard, they were hypersensitive and they were triggered because of my beard appearance.
Oh,
wow.
Oh, that's
so what you said is 100% accurate and honest.
That's pretty
and
deep.
that's literally not the first. That's literally not the first time that someone has told me that.
Yeah, there are definitely some triggers that sometimes we don't realize. Even just some verbal triggers, right? Maybe saying something or moving a certain way, or suggesting certain things that you would innocently do, but not realizing it's a trigger for someone else. So I think that's one of the things that we have to also be mindful of, the people that we work with, the young children that we're around, to make sure that we, make them feel secure and protected, because that we don't know outside of us what they're being exposed to.
And also some of the behavioral signs is a person who's normally introverted, they immediately become extroverted. And then also a person who's naturally extroverted, they immediately become introverted. Like that because like introversion and extroversion are kind of like polar opposites of each other. People are kind of like isolated or insulated, and they become outgoing. That's a red trigger. That's a red flag. That's a sign. And also someone who's naturally outgoing and then they become more self-absorbed. That's a sign. That's a red flag also.
Promiscuity is a sign. A child having knowledge of adult language, using adult language, acting out with dolls or animals, and not animals, but acting out with dolls, taking pictures of themselves, nude pictures of themselves, watching pornography. There's so many signs. And you can visit our website, www.buddyspeaks.org, and you will see the signs for sexual assault, red flag behaviors. If in fact you're concerned, please feel free to send me an inbox. And if you have some concerns, if you think that your child may have been abused, you can contact me, or you can call the 1-800 number, 1-800-4-A-CHILD, the number 4, and they will connect you to your local community. But, reach out to us and let us know. And I am here to help and support.
Thank you so much, Sister Shariea.
Welcome. But please, if you're in New York, come to the workshop. It's free, right?
It's definitely free.
It's free.
Yes, it's happening next week.
Everyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome to the Staten Island workshop. Everyone.
Would you tell them the time?
Yes, the workshop for the children is from 11 a.m. and the adult, I believe it's 1:45. p.m. We will be doing a lot of interactive workshops, activities with the kids and the families. The address is 1100 Castleton Avenue. Please reach out to us so we can put you on the list, because it is, we're going to have placements for everyone. So we want to make sure that we serve the community and we have, the right capacity for the space that we're utilizing. So please, if you're interested in coming to the workshop and having your child come to the workshop, please reach out to us as Muslim Sisters of SI at gmail.com, or you can call us at 718-619-1365. Thank you. Is there any other questions?
And if you need a ride, my boy Rashawn Bronson, he's going to be the assessor ride guy. He's going to be the designated Uber guy.
Okay, there's another question. Question for the sister. What do you do if you suspect that something may have happened to your child and they don't want to open up to the parents or a therapist?
Yeah, a lot of times children don't want to open up. They don't open up because they're afraid. They don't open up because they've been threatened. They don't open up because they're confused. We have, and therapists have special techniques that they can use. You can take them if they're younger children. They have the child advocacy centers where they have a way to get the child to open up, but constantly talking to them, letting them know, if anything ever happened to you, I want you to know that I'm going to believe you. I believe you. I want you to know that it's never, ever going to be your fault. You will never get in trouble. And I'm here for you. Constantly saying that every day, going over what if scenarios, letting them know, please know that if anyone has ever done anything that made you feel uncomfortable, made you feel unsafe, made you feel scared, anyone ever touched you, made you touch them, they need to hear, I will always believe you. I will always have your back. It will never, ever you will never be in trouble. Talk to the child's pediatrician. Let the pediatrician know this is what you suspect. Call if you have any behaviors where the child is acting out, call the people at the child advocacy centers. You can't report the abuse because you may not know who it is, but talking to the doctors and letting them know this is what's happening. These are the behaviors my child is experiencing. Please help me out. But have these conversations with your children. If they're younger, there's books that you can read that may trigger something to make the child feel like this happened to me. Just constantly have conversations with your children so they feel comfortable disclosing. Some children never disclose. Some people take 6 years, 10 years. Some people wait until they're an adult. But what's most important is that they have a safe space where they feel like they can tell you that you're not going to get upset, that it's not their responsibility to worry about our emotions. If it's their parent, that you're going to have their back and that you want to keep them safe.
Thank you so much. If there's no other questions, we're going to close out because we're gearing up for next week, and it's going to be a total awesome and empowering. I think we talked about that, the barriers prevention. So yes.
Well,
so
if there's any more questions, let's make sure we answer all the questions.
Yes,
I'm going to leave any
absolutely.
questions open, and then we can jump off.
There's a question about, it says something versus child sex trafficking. I guess it is a form of abuse, but Sister Shariea,
I'm not really clear on the question, so I can't answer it. But child sex abuse is child sex trafficking. It's all one and the same. But if that's the last, now if you have another question, go ahead. If you can ask that question again, we can get to it, and then we're going to jump off, right?
Yes. I think that's it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming on and sharing your experience and knowledge with us. And inshallah, next week we will be having our workshop here on Staten Island. with PS 18 and at the Chance in Life, 1100 Castleton Avenue here in Staten Island. So thank you again for coming on to another episode of It's Taboo. Let's Talk. Have a good day.
Assalamu alaikum. Have a
Wa
good day. Thank
alaikum
you so much for
salam.
everyone